This is Khanu, and I'm a substitute teacher in Maryland. This is my final presentation on the data action model, and I will discuss how it was used in analyzing the reading comprehension data of second grade students. So, what is the data action model? Well, it is a model developed by Daniel Venables that provides a system for analyzing and responding to student data. The ultimate goal is to close learning and instruction gaps. As with all data, the usefulness of student data is generally proportional to the frequency with which it's collected. There are two types of data that can be analyzed. You have microdata, such as quizzes, and you have macro data. These are big data, such as year-end exams, high-stake assessments. Microdata, they're more useful than macro data because it gives you real clues in identifying gaps of particular students, and so that you can fix them before the gaps get too wide. There are three general steps in the data action model process. The first is to review student data to identify learning gaps and determine if they correspond to instructional gaps. Then you set a goal that reflects an improvement in closing gaps detected and determine solutions and a plan to achieve that goal. Last, you use an evaluation metric to determine the effectiveness of the plan implemented and decide on further steps to take. The data action model is organized by meetings, and my group conducted all 5 meetings. The first data meeting included reviewing data and determining additional artifacts needed. Then we asked exploratory questions on the data, and then we developed notice and wonder statements, and these are factual observations and speculative causes. For the second data meeting, what we did was triangulate the data, and we did this by focusing on the exploratory question while reviewing the artifacts to uncover learning and instruction gaps. At the third data meeting, we continued to identify learning and instruction gaps, but then we also set a target goal known as SMART goal, and we chose assessment metrics to measure the SMART goal. For our fourth data meeting, we created an action plan to achieve the SMART goal by selecting new strategies and activities to close learning and instruction gaps. And what we did was we reviewed research articles to come up with ideas. At our last data meeting, we measured the success of the action plans that were implemented by using the appropriate assessment metrics and determined further actions to take. For my presentation, I will discuss Julie's reading comprehension data. Julie is a member of my group, and she's a practicing teacher. We used the data action model to analyze the reading comprehension data she provided on her second grade students. On the chart, what you will see are the scores of her students compared to other second grade students in other public, private schools, and as well as in independent schools. And what we noticed based on this data was that there was a significant jump from scores reaching 80 to the 90th percentile all the way down to the to 60. 35% of students were in the 50th percentile or lower. But overall, Julie's students scored higher than the counterparts in independent schools. So what we wondered were, like, what were the students' F&P reading levels? You know, are the students reading on grade level or below grade level? Is the reading comprehension data based on grade appropriate text? And we also wondered what happened to the 70th percentile. Why does this gap exist in the data? Julie's exploratory question based on her data was, am I differentiating reading comprehension enough for students to be successful? And how can I do better to close the learning gaps? Her notice statements, what she noticed about her data was that about 10% of her class was in the 90th percentile or higher, and about 50% were under the 50 percentile in independent school. And Julie wondered what reading comprehension skills had been covered by this time of year and what differentiation techniques had been used by the teachers of the other second grade students. At our next meeting, Julie provided additional artifacts to help us better understand the data she provided in data meeting number 1 and to help answer her exploratory questions. The first artifact was data from the CTP test. This data shows the combined scores of auditory comprehension, reading comprehension, and word analysis of her second grade students. Mathematics is also on the data sheet, but we are not focusing on that information at this point since Julie's exploratory question is about reading comprehension. As you can see, the test results of her students show that they performed better than students in private, public, and independent schools. Julie also provided test scores of 2 students in her class. This student scored in the 90th and 100th percentile in all the reading comprehension categories, well above the average scores of her counterparts. The second student scored poorly in the reading comprehension and word analysis categories, way less than the average percentile of her counterparts. Here is Julie's artifact tracking sheet, where she ranked the learning and instruction gaps perceived in the data. F&P scores were also used to note learning and instructional gaps. Julie rated all but one of the learning gaps a 5 because it's important that students are able to not only decode the words in the text, but also make meaning and understand the text. These are the skills that will help students be successful readers. For Julie's observable gaps, the most significant, ranked by the number 5, were analyzing text and answering explicit information questions from the text at the individual level. Also significant, but ranked as 4, were understanding vocabulary and context and drawing inference from text in small group sessions. Julie believes these learning gaps may correlate to an instruction gap, which is the importance she places on analyzing text during whole class instruction. Julie's SMART target learning goal was to have at least 90% of her second grade students read at K-level books or above by the time of the ERB test in February. Julie intends to use the F&P testing as an evaluation metric. Here is Julie's action plan tracking sheet. On it, she lists 6 activities and strategies she intends to use in her class to increase the reading comprehension level of her second grade students. Once again, her SMART goal is to have at least 80% of her second grade students to read level K books or above at the end of 6 weeks. Julie's first action plan is RadsKids. RadsKids is an online reading comprehension program. On RadsKids, students read books online and answer comprehension quizzes to gain points after each reading. What Julie intends to do is have students read independently and then meet with her in small groups to discuss the books that were read and comprehension strategies. Julie's second action plan is word study, and this is reserved for students that read at a very low level. And what Julie intends to do is to gather these students in small groups or one by one and break apart multi-syllable words. Julie's third action plan is guided reading, and this is a strategy she currently uses in her classroom. And with this strategy, the students meet with her based on their need or reading levels. It could be individual meetings or sometimes they are grouped. Julie's fourth action plan is Reader's Theater. Reader's Theater is a series of books that are plays. The students will each have a part in the play and be able to read and act out the play. Julie's fifth action plan is Front Row, which is an online learning program. With Front Row, reading comprehension can be personalized. So it is very good for individual students in small groups. Reading material is based on student reading level. Questions on reading materials are used to check comprehension. Julie's final action plan is Mayan. Mayan is also a web-based program, and with this strategy, students choose the reading material of their choice and complete a multiple choice quiz. Here is student data that Julie provided from RASKids, which is listed on her data action plan. RASKids is a program used to help students with reading and reading comprehension, which supports Julie's SMART goal directly. In RASKids, Julie assigns the level of books she wants her students to read, and then they read the books and answer comprehension questions on them. The program breaks apart the assessment and provides a report to show skill areas the student is successful in and areas that need improvement. The data is very helpful for Julie because she can use it to create mini lessons and guided reading group lessons. According to the RASKids data, the student did not do as well on vocabulary or sequencing of events, which are areas which need developing if the student is to read at level K. Since the students selected to complete RASKids had a poor starting point with their reading and comprehension, it is safe to say that additional support is needed by the student. Julie's next plan of action would be to find a combination of strategies to help the student be successful in these areas. It must be noted that a missing variable is knowing whether the student was able to refer to text while completing the assessment. Julie's next step was to implement additional action plans, including word study, front row, and reading A to the Z. Julie provided two final artifacts. The first is word study. With the word study program, Julie was able to assess the students, figure out their needs in decoding and spelling, and teach them word patterns they need to be successful. The students completed activities and were able to move through 1 to 2 lists through this data action process. This is definitely something Julie will continue to use in her classroom. This is Julie's final artifact on the web-based program called Front Row. After students take a pretest, they are given activities based on their reading level. It is an adaptive software, and what you see is the data the program gives the teacher after an assessment. Front Row also has a word study component to it. Here is Julie's final artifact on Reading A to Z. Reading A to Z creates class activity reports that identify areas where the class needs support in certain comprehension skills. The students are performing better in class because of the work of using the data action protocol. Even though there is still a student who is reading under K level, she is receiving support, and this systemic approach is helping her. Julie's next step is to continue with evaluating the different strategies and activities. Mark Twain once said, "Data is like garbage. You better know what you're going to do with it before you collect it." After learning about the data action model, I no longer agree with his quote. I believe that it is impossible to know what to do with student data prior to collection, given the nuances of the learning needs of particular students. I'm happy that my group members appreciated and encouraged my questions and observations, because as a non-practicing teacher, that is what I think I was able to effectively provide, and my constructive feedback is what I believe was my strength in this course. I believe my weakness involves not being able to know all the various assessment tools, and I need to take the initiative to explore them. It's been a pleasure taking this class.